I encourage you all to stay outside of the beds if you can, but since it's just me stepping in here, it'll be less compacting. Oh yeah, this is a thing. If you're not a veggie gardener, you don't really want to step on your soil that you're growing plants in, like I'm doing. You don't want to do what I'm doing. But it's just easier for me to talk if I'm
do as I say, not as I do.
And the reason is because vegetables, you know, soil wants, it's all this balance of oxygen and water. And if you're stepping on the soil, especially too much, like one person just stepping on the soil is not going to do much, right? But if we're doing it over and over again, especially driving vehicles over it, or tractors or cars or whatever, that's compacting the soil, driving out the oxygen, you know, driving out the biology, and we're essentially ruining our soil. So that's why I say this. So this first plant here, and every time I talk about a plant, I encourage you to harvest it and grab one of your own. So we're going to grab one of these guys here. All right. So can anyone tell me what this friend is? What this friend's name is? Yeah, purple dead nettle, exactly, Megan. So this is Lamium purpurea, is the Latin name, Lamium purpurea, and the common name is purple dead nettle. It's called dead nettle because there's the plant stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, which has needles, right? And nettles, right, that poke you, and it's actually a medicinal sting, but it does sting. This plant does not have that, so it's called dead nettle because basically they're not true nettles. So it's a fuzzy, it's actually fuzzy leafed, very safe, very edible, very medicinal plant in the mint family. If you notice the square stems, you all see that? How they're literally distinctively square, right? And the leaves, do you notice how they're branching out directly across from each other, opposite each other on the stem?
Yeah.
Can I get a verbal yes or no? Sweet, okay. So this is another way of identifying and classifying plants. This is called opposite growth, right? There's also, if it were staggered up the stem, it would be alternate. All mint family plants, I should say rather, are opposite leaved, square stemmed, and many of them have a strong kind of aroma because they have a lot of aromatic oils in them. Although this plant, if you notice, you can crush a leaf, no smell really whatsoever, very minimal smell. Because also it's an understory tree, right? It doesn't get much taller than this. This is like maximum pawpaw height, just about, a little bit taller. But yeah, some pretty cool features. Also, remember the mint family plant, we were talking about having alternate leaves or opposite leaves? What about this one? Alternate or opposite?
Alternate.
Alternate, exactly. Because the branches are coming off staggered up the leaf stem, right? They're not directly across from each other.
This is like the perfect pawpaw tree.
Yeah. It's a great pawpaw tree. What I would do, personally, you know, because I've been farming and doing these things now for 12 years, and I've worked on so many farms. Currently, my focus is, for the last 3 to 4 years, has been agroforestry systems, like perennial fruit and nut trees. So I just think I do a lot of management of these types of trees. What I would do personally is cut back these lower branches, cut off these 4 branches, maybe this one. But you could potentially leave that one, because that way you have an open understory. You can manage underneath of it, and then you can collect the fruit that drops in the fall. Because right now it's going to be awkward to access the fruit. That's what I would do personally.
And what do you do anything with the?
Add them to let them compost. You know, cut them up, and you can let them compost on the ground and feed the soil. So pawpaw, an amazing plant with some little caveats, you know, to keep in mind. But overall, super rad plant. And yeah, any other pawpaw questions while we're here?
Just the hole.
Holes. Sorry, one more time.
Is that where
The eyes.
come out of, or is it a dump back?
Holes? Oh no, this is just where branches.
Is that where it seems so uniform.
This was a branch that came off and then healed over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what ours is.
So I'm
Totally.
just curious, I've been like kind of going over, this plant needs like a lot of water and then that plant doesn't. So is that the reason why this was planted here? Because they would take away from like all the water from that one?
Well, okay, I'm not going to be critical of Ryu's
I mean,
design
no, I'm
here.
just, no, I'm just
I'm
curious.
not going to be critical of Ryu's design here, but I would, if I were doing it again, I wouldn't put the rosemary lower down than the pawpaw. The pawpaw for me would go down there.
Right.
Because it's that, if you notice the lay of the land, the slope actually goes down that way, which you were noticing. So I would have put pawpaws down there and planted rosemary actually further up, kind of in a little bit of a drier space personally, but the rosemary's doing fine.
Yeah,
So,
it's doing wonderful.
but overall,
It's like,
I would have thought about that, and I would have probably
Oh, plantain.
Okay.
Such a good salve.
So this
For
is
like cuts and
this species specifically is Plantago lanceolata. This is the lance leaf plantain. But there's other ones that maybe if we see them, I'll point them out, that have more rounded looking leaves, right? But this one has kind of a pointier looking leaf. But all of them have these kind of very exaggerated veins on the underside of the leaves, right? And oftentimes, you'll see the purple color at the base of the stem here. You look up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the native plantains will actually have that purple color growing from the base of the stem. According to the Maryland Biodiversity Project, they have 7 different species of plantain in Maryland, so I imagine it's the same. We've got Plantago lanceolata, Plantago virginica, Plantago cordata, Plantago rugelii, and Plantago major. I think there's one more. But they're all interchangeable in terms of their edible and medicinal properties, right? So no matter what species you are harvesting, you know that it is safe to eat and make medicine with. This is an incredible, if you feel like nibbling on a leaf, go ahead. It's incredibly sweet herb. It's a good one for a salad. It's good steamed, it's good at pestos, overall, good at soups, good kind of for everything that you would use a green for, right? Yeah. Also growing just like the dandelion ubiquitously. If you notice though, plantain is going to grow and thrive actually in areas that are compacted more. This plant likes, it doesn't want to compete with the other grasses and with the upside. Who's been to anywhere Mediterranean? Raise your hand. Okay, well, not too many of us. Well, anyone, if you ever go to the Mediterranean, you'll drive down the road and you'll literally just see olive trees everywhere, silver shimmering leaves everywhere, right? I've been to Greece, I've been to Portugal, I've been to Italy, and that's kind of, there's a lot of olives cultivation. And yeah, if you look on the underside, it looks like that kind of silvery hue, right? So pretty, in fact. This is a non-native dispersive plant that the Army Corps of Engineers planted, in the mid-1900s to try to reduce erosion on forest hillsides because deer were so overpopulated because we killed all the predators. And this is a plant that produces a ton of berries, so of course the birds and everything loved it, and it dispersed everywhere all over the country. And now people call it an invasive. I don't use words like invasive to describe plants because that's always an very anthropomorphized terminology. They didn't actually invade. Most of the times we actually established them, whether advertently or inadvertently, and they certainly didn't come with pitchforks and torches on ships. And plants also, like I was saying earlier, aren't confined to our they're not fixated on our sense of like pre-colonial, biology versus post-colonial biology, and a cactus in Texas isn't gonna like not cross into Mexico because you get what I'm saying, right? So plants don't think in terms of our linear time frame, and they don't think in terms of, well, I only grow in one place, or plants forever throughout time have always moved around. That being said, right, native species have co-evolved with other species for thousands of years, so they're important for native wildlife, and they do a lot of beneficial things, right? So prioritizing native species is really important. We have to, especially the endangered ones, right? That being said, I'm not a person to demonize plants that are not native to here because, I like to ask people on my walks, I'm not gonna ask y'all, but how many of our ancestors are native to this continent? Most people don't raise their hand, maybe sometimes 1 or 2 people. The point is, even if, our ancestors aren't native to here, it doesn't mean that we're not still valuable, trying to live a good life here, doing our thing, right? We're not just gonna say, oh, he's not from here, bad. That's called racism. You know what I mean? So if we applied the same language and thought process to plants that we did, or to humans that we did to plants, everyone would be like a racist xenophobe. You know what I mean? So I encourage people to try to think outside of our common horticultural language of invasive. Because our brain does this thing where we go, okay, invasive or non-native, invasive, bad.
Right.
It's a very linear thought process that actually doesn't encapsulate the nuanced reality of why these plants are here, what they're doing, and what role they can serve in any way, shape, or form. It's a very actually reductionistic, whitewashed kind of way of thinking about things, right?
So unfair to disagree too, because at what point are you not native, right? There's got to be a space between being like from somewhere else and then being here for so long, right? And then you're not. What are you then? Do you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's part of like this white guilt thing, you know, that like we try to make sure we restore the native plants and stuff, but like none of those white people that are like all about. It's normally like the old white ladies. So I'm not trying to hate. I'm just saying, you know, those are the most hardcore horticulturalists, and they're the ones who will be talking all about native plants. But I'll never see any of them donate to a native organization or have Native American friends. Just anyone in horticulture, you know. It's often there's this double standard, right? We're not supporting native people. Anyway.
Thank you for speaking to that. That's a sensitive button with me, and you know, it always becomes a big point of conversation here.
Right. So now the first day, we're establishing that we're not going to use the word invasive to describe plants and do this kind of linear thought process. So here's some alternative terminologies, right? So you've probably heard me saying things like dispersive, right? So dispersive plants are plants that have seeds or fruits that animals or things or the wind perhaps picks up, eats, and poops out or carries away, right? And then it spreads that way. So like autumn olive, like the wineberry, poison ivy, porcelain berry, etc., right? Plants that are spreading are like pawpaw or nettle or mint, or things that send out rhizomes that sucker and send up shoots. So spreading versus dispersive. So the first one is observe and interact, right? Pretty plain and simple. Permaculture isn't about just going and exerting your influence and your idea on something. At least not entirely. There is definitely some of that, I will say, you know. But it's also about observing and getting to know the space. People often recommend sitting with a space for a year before you even do a design, especially if it's like raw land or whatever, right? So yeah, it's all about observing, interacting, getting involved. Number 2 is catch and store energy, right? Solar energy, water through water catchment, biology through soil enhancement, right? So the idea is to catch and store energy with our systems in various ways. I'll keep them all fairly brief. Number 3 is to obtain a yield, right? Like in this case, if you're going to plant a kiwi or a grape, this is not planted, this is wild, right? But if you're going to plant one, you want to be able to harvest from it because you're putting all this work in. A lot of what we're doing is like, oftentimes we have these amazing ornamental gardens, but we don't eat anything from them.
Yeah.
What the heck, you know? That's only in the United States. Seriously. Everywhere else people are growing food. So obtain a yield, right? Harvest something for yourself. Let's take away the pressure on the food system, right? Take away some of that pressure. Number 4 is apply self-regulation and accept feedback. So it's noticing how what you're doing in the environment is impacting the environment, and then what feedback you're getting from life, from your garden, from your friends, from your community. So it's all about that cycle of feedback. Number 5 is use and value renewable resources and services. Pretty clear, right? We want our systems to be regenerative and self-sustaining. Right now, we have our economic system is based on prioritizing quarterly earnings for shareholders, right? So we extract more resources than the world regenerates.
Surplus
right?
value.
Right. So we're focused on that, but actually we're trying to in our thinking and in our designs and our way of being, we want to think more regeneratively, right? So use renewable resources. How can we create renewable systems? Yes, self-sustaining. Number 6 is produce no waste. Obviously, we're awful at that. We're not going to be perfect at that. We have this cradle to grave mentality with all of our products, where the grave being the landfill, right? Cradle being their creation. Oftentimes, our products are also mined by, especially electronics, like mined by child labor in the Congo or some awful thing, right? So.
Right now?
Yeah, like so much of our products are unjust and have these really awful supply chains, and we produce so much waste. So we need to start thinking cradle to cradle. So how can the products that we create ultimately then easily be converted into something else valuable, like another product, or something that just goes back to the earth and gets composted and builds biology and builds fertility in the soil or something, right? So rather than cradle to grave being the landfill, because the landfill, nothing breaks down in landfill, it just gets compacted. It's just, that's just where we relegate all the things we don't want to deal with. But it's still there, they're there. You know, they're there. It's like all the emotions and the traumas and things that we press down as an individual or a collective, right? Same thing. We just compact it down, all our trash into the earth.
Just close your eyes. It's not there. It's fine.
Yeah, basically.
One person
Close your
sifting
nose
through
as you
it.
drive by.
There's like 5 guys sifting through it.
What'd you say?
And there's like 5 people. They're sifting through it.
Right, yeah.
Right?
They have like one machine.
There's entire economies in India literally based on repurposing metal scrap and things. We also export our trash to other countries because we have more than we can even deal with here.
Philly's contract ran out, and they were just throwing it all in the dumpster. The recycling contract ran out, and people didn't know, they didn't tell anyone, and people were still separating it, and they would see the trash truck pick up their recycling, and
like,
throw
"Wait
it
a
all in
second."
the same one. And then one day someone asked, and the city had to admit it, but it's an interesting little fun fact.
I still recycle, even though it's mostly a farce.
Not real,
but
yeah.
It's still worth doing.
Use less.
It at least makes us feel good. So it was literally a scam by plastic companies to justify being able to produce all these plastic products. They knew they were never going to be able to recycle them or repurpose them. That was never actually part of the idea. You know, it's all about how can we create the image of something without actually doing it.
All right, Marks.
Yeah, so back to the permaculture principles. That was produce no waste. We're awful at that. We're working on that, right? Number 7 is to design from patterns to details. So, for example, we were talking about where to place the fruit trees up there based on water and how the water moves through the land. So you can think about the pattern is, how does the water move? Where's the lowest areas? Okay, what plants love water? Okay, we'll think about that. That's like we'll use that basic framing to, okay, I know we want to plant the pawpaws and the water-loving things down here. Oh, this kind of higher elevation area, we'll plant like the apples and things that don't want wet roots, you know. So that's a pattern. And then pick a guild, right? A guild is a grouping of plants. So underneath the pawpaw, you could think of, okay, what plants do we want to plant underneath the pawpaw to support its growth and prevent weeds? Oh, maybe we want comfrey, maybe we want stinging nettles down there, maybe we want mint or something, or, you know, green and gold, or whatever it is. So designing from the patterns, kind of the larger concepts, down to the details, right, is a helpful way of thinking about it. Especially when you're doing a large landscape design, if you're thinking about, oh, every square inch, what do I want? It's going to be an impossible design, right? Whereas if you think, okay, my zone 4 I know is the orchard. I'm going to allocate that over there. That's going to be the plants that I don't have to go and mulch every day or weed, but maybe twice a year I'll go and like prune them and mulch them, right? Zone 1 is going to be your veggie garden that you go to every day or walk past and pull weeds every day and harvest for your tea and your morning eggs and breakfast, right? So yeah, designing from patterns to details, just some things to keep in mind. Number 7 is integrate rather than segregate, right? Yeah. 7. We're on 7 now. 8, thank you. Thank you, Raya. You're right. She's on it. So yeah, we're on number 8 right now, right? Integrate rather than segregate. And that includes everything. In terms of human communities, plant communities, mushroom communities, right? Diversity of thought and opinion, even within the human communities. We don't want an echo chamber. We want diversity of everything. And in ecosystems and in biology, diversity means resilience. Monoculture systems, ecological systems are fragile. They need to be propped up by chemical agriculture and synthetic inputs, right? Whereas a resilient, biodiverse, ecological system is self-sustaining, it's regenerative, it's functional. It builds fertility, builds ecology. So that's what we're going for. And also, yeah, we want in our communities, in our friendships, in our social circles, we want a diversity of people, we want a diversity of thought. Yeah, it's all really important.
Do we?
Yeah. Number 9 is to use and value. Okay, no, I just said diversity. Use and value diversity. Integrate rather than segregate is what I just said. The second one, which is kind of very similar, right? Use and value diversity. We get that, right? It's kind of similar to the integrate rather than segregate. But in addition to the integrate rather than segregate is this concept of, especially in landscape design, of having systems that overlap functions. So, for example, rather than having your vegetables over there and all your animals over there and your fruit trees over there, why not have your perennial vegetables planted with your fruit trees and the animals weaving in amongst those, and it's kind of all feeding together, right? So integrating systems. And we can apply this to social systems, economic systems, political systems, biological systems. Yeah, obviously use and value diversity kind of speaks for itself, right? And then number 10 is to, what is 10 here? I'm forgetting number 10 here off the top of my head.
You could rub the rosemary.
Someone, I'm gonna look it up here really quick.
Well,
That's
he's
a
looking up,
memory.
here's a mayapple with the double,
No, acronym. What's the acronym?
with the double leaf.
Made.
Yeah.
Oh, for this one. For the
Oh,
10.
yeah.
We need another
There's
one.
another one. That one over there is just
I know. I was
No,
like
these are
so
intuitive.
impressed that he was memorizing all 12. I was like,
I forgot one, guys. My bad. I was actually already on number 10 too. We're on number 11. My bad. All right. Use edges and value the marginal. Right? Yes, thank you. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what number we're talking about them in, right? All these principles exist regardless of their order.
And they intertwine.
They intertwine, they're all interwoven, right? But using edges and valuing the marginal. So right here, where we're standing, is actually the edge of an ecosystem. That field is a full sun ecosystem that's, you know, it's an herbaceous plain. It's basically like a grassy plain, you know, that we are maintaining it that way. Here, this is buttressing up, kind of butting up against this forest, right? A temperate hardwood forest. So right here in this edge, if you notice, there's a lot of diversity, right? It's getting mowed right here, but there's gonna be honeysuckles that pop up. There's black raspberries, there's wineberries, there's blackberries. Because right here is this sunny spot that's not getting mowed, right? But it's still not deep in the forest where it's full shade. So it's this sunny edge, right? An edge is also called, in ecological terminology, is called an ecotone or an edge effect. These are all environmental science terminologies. And that's this observation that literally diversity of flora and fauna is greatly increased in these edges, right? At the edges of ecosystems. We can also push the edge of our consciousness, right? Like, we need to not just be in our comfort zone the whole time. We kind of have to push our edge a little bit.
The outlier.
Yeah. So use edges and value the marginal, right? Marginal ways of thinking. Just thinking like everyone else isn't necessarily the best way to do it. We're actually here to try to think differently, to try to not engage in the business as usual approach, but to try to live more holistically, live more regeneratively. So, yeah, use edges and value the marginal. And then, the last one. Sorry guys.
No, that's okay.
Yes, of course. Creatively use and respond to change. The only constant of life, you know? Permaculture and modeling ecological and landscape and social systems after biological systems, which is what permaculture is about, right? Mimicking natural systems in our human systems. It requires us to adapt to change and have the ability to change within ourselves and within our system, right? That's so important. So I don't think I need to explain that one much further, but yeah, that's all 12 principles, and my goal, and hopefully throughout the course, outside of just me teaching, right, the teachers and you within your own reflection can kind of link back some of the things you're learning to these principles. All right, so that's those two.
Oh.
And then here is root division. So that's live stake cuttings. And then this is root division, right? So with anything nettles or mint or comfrey or, let's see, what else would do? Mugwort, right? I saw there's a bunch of mugwort growing in here too. Yeah, there's a bunch of mugwort behind y'all. Anything that basically propagates via root, yarrow, you know, passion root. I mean, there's so many things that you can just take a piece of root, shove it in the ground, and it will grow, right? So this is comfrey. Ryu has some growing up there by her beehives, actually. This is an amazing plant in the Boraginaceae family. It's got these beautiful flowers. It's an incredible medicinal herb. It's also called bone knit. People use it as a poultice, you know, for literally healing like deep broken bones, like deep wounds, serious damage. You can do a poultice of it. where if you, for example, blend it up and then put it on the part of the body that you have the injury, like even if it's internal, and then put like a wet towel with hot water kind of on it, it will like seep through into the skin. Does that make sense? So there's the spit poultice that we learned earlier with the plantain, and what I just described is like more like advanced poultice. It's like a, more thorough poultice basically, without spit. Because you don't actually want to like chew the comfrey leaf so much. Comfrey isn't one that you really take internally too much, right? It's more of an external thing. So, but it's also this incredible soil building plant. So it's got these deep roots that, these are gnarly, right? And they tap into the root and they really break up the soil, and it produces all these leaves that are tapping into these deep nutrient sources and then dying back onto the soil and building this incredible rich soil. Like anytime you look around the base of a comfrey plant, if it's been there for like a year or more, super juicy, super fertile soil, because it adds so much good organic matter and everything, right? So an incredible soil building plant, incredible medicinal plant, very easy to propagate. The bees love it. It's pretty, and it doesn't get more than like this high.
Nice.
This specific variety is called Bocking 14, and it grows outward in a clump. So it doesn't like spread. Like it won't be like over there tomorrow. It'll be like just grow like this year after year, which is nice. You can easily manage it. Things that run, a little tougher to manage. So this is from Europe. It's a non-native one here. It's in the Symphytum officinale is the Latin name. I didn't talk about the grape. This is Vitis is the grape genus. Vitaceae is the grape family. So yeah, and with the comfrey root, literally what I would do is to process all these roots into like, this is like 100 or more roots. What I'm gonna do is really just take literally chunks about 1 to 2 inches. Bam, new comfrey plant. New comfrey plant.
Wow.
Right? So this one right here is like 4 or 5 plants. Like, also I'm gonna cut off the leaves. So this one alone right here, let's see, how would I do this? Bam, 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 and you could just plant this whole thing. So that's the essence of it. This is root division, right? And with a root division, you obviously have to fully bury the plant. With this, obviously, with live stake, you want some of the plant above the ground. That makes sense, right? So I think, I've got these pruners here. We'll take turns. Do you have another pair of hand pruners? Are you open to grabbing those?
Where's the, never mind.
Okay. So yeah, we've got a few pairs of hand pruners here. So what I want to do is, essentially have all of this cut up by the end of our workshop here. But I could do this myself in like 5 minutes.
I would say
You know what I mean?
Really not a lot.
It's not a lot, no. So you guys together could do this easily in 10 minutes. Just, I think everyone get a chance to maybe take a couple cuttings from each thing, so you get a sense of what it is. Once you've done a little bit, maybe put the pruners back and then or pass them on to a friend. And then also everyone is going to go home with a couple of elderberry, 1 or 2 comfrey, and a couple of the grapes. So everyone's going to take a few of the cuttings home.
Can you tell us, please, what kind of place to plant each of these things in our garden? Like elderberry, my elderberry loves the sun. I don't think it would do well in the shade.
Totally.
That would be very helpful.
Totally. Elderberry tolerates partial shade, mostly loves full sun if it can get it. It'll produce more fruit, but it will produce fruit in partial shade, as long as it's like 5 hours a day. And then comfrey does want at least partial shade, if not full sun.
Okay.
Partial sun, if not full sun, rather. Grape is going to want more full sun if it can get it, but will also tolerate partial shade. All of these are mostly sun lovers, which will tolerate some shade.
Thank you.
Totally.
Can any of them be put in pots?
Absolutely. So elderberry, if you don't know what to do with it or where to plant it, you can always just leave it in a pot for a while.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Like I'll pot up like 100 of them at a time, and then just sell them off or plant them as needed. I don't have any soil. Do you know if there's any potting mix here, or just like a pile of soil somewhere?